If you think the worst morning of your life is a Monday, an alarm clock, or cold water in the shower, then I'm about to disappoint you. The worst morning begins when you wake up in someone else's apartment, wearing bright pink pajamas covered in unicorns, with absolutely no clue where you are. My name is Cody West, and trust me, this wasn't the worst situation I've ever gotten myself into, but it was definitely the weirdest. Let's start with the fact that I absolutely despise the color pink, and I've disliked unicorns ever since kindergarten when I had an unfortunate carousel ride featuring these lovely creatures and nearly broke my nose. So seeing them now at 29 years old, decorating my chest was, to put it mildly, shocking. The first thing I did was touch the pajamas. The fabric felt nice, actually, too nice for adult men's pajamas. Who even wears something like this? Could I have gotten so wasted last night that I started playing dress-up as a pink princess? The second surprise was less pleasant. Turning my head to the right, I saw a man lying next to me on the bed, about 45 years old, quite dignified-looking, sporting a neatly trimmed beard and wearing serious-looking striped pajamas. It might have been fine, except he appeared oddly motionless. His eyes were closed and his head rested in an unnaturally twisted position. My heart began pounding suspiciously, and any thought of, maybe he's just sleeping, vanished as soon as I spotted a blood-covered frying pan on the floor beside the bed. "Oh God, please, not this!" I groaned, jumping out of bed and immediately getting tangled up in my pink, unicorn-themed uniform. Crashing loudly onto the floor and dragging the blanket down with me, I began frantically trying to remember last night. My memories were so blurry that the only thing clearly surfacing was the face of a girl smiling at me and saying, "Cody, you'll love the party at my uncle's place. It'll be fun." Fun? Apparently, I'd missed the part of the party where they handed out unicorn pajamas and offered guests frying pans to handle the apartment owner. Looking around, I realized I was in a very upscale apartment, filled with designer furniture, a huge painting of some disturbing abstract art, and an aquarium containing one unhappy goldfish. She stared at me accusingly, as if to say, "What now, Cody?" "Great question," I whispered to the fish, quickly moving to the window. Glancing outside, I realized I was on the 12th floor, and below, police cars with flashing lights were already pulling up. Clearly, someone had already called the cops. Panic intensified. I urgently needed to do something, but instead of rational ideas, my brain offered absurd suggestions like, pretend you're a closet, or put on glasses and pose as a statue. Deciding hiding was pointless, I tried desperately to recall the phone number of the girl who invited me to this unfortunate party. Naturally, my mind was emptier than a student's fridge after exams. Suddenly, the apartment door flew open, and two police officers stormed inside, followed closely by a disheveled woman around 50, wearing a fur coat over her nightgown. "That's him, the killer," she screeched, pointing her finger directly at me. "He murdered my husband." "I don't even know your husband," I began defensively, raising my hands as though surrendering to the unicorns. The policemen exchanged skeptical looks, clearly indicating, "We've heard this before," after which one of them, a large guy with a mustache and an executioner's stare, stepped forward and sternly asked, "And I suppose you also have no idea who put you in the pink pajamas?" "As a matter of fact, no," I protested indignantly. "I've had an allergy to unicorns since childhood." The policeman obviously didn't appreciate my humor, exchanging meaningful glances again. "You'll have to come with us, Mr. Cody West," I sighed hopelessly. "But honestly, I can't remember anything." The officer smirked and took out his handcuffs. "Well, you can start remembering at the station, after you." As they led me out, I heard the mocking whisper of the apartment's owner behind me. "Well, don't worry, Cody West. They don't hand out cute pajamas like that in jail. Better get used to stripes." At that moment, I realized, if I didn't find the real killer faster than the police, The next pajamas I'd wear would be far less comfortable. If you think sitting in a police car wearing pink pajamas covered with unicorns is funny, I've got some disappointing news. It's not funny at all, especially when you realize your adventure last night ended so dramatically that now the police suspect you of murder. They brought me to the police station as if I were some extremely dangerous criminal. The officer escorting me could hardly suppress his laughter, and the desk sergeant nearly fell off his chair when he saw my outfit. "Hey, sweetheart, did you forget to get dressed?" shouted one of the detainees from behind the bars. "You'll laugh later," I muttered angrily, although my authority was obviously undermined by the pink unicorns on my pajamas. They placed me in a tiny interrogation room. The ceiling lamp flickered unpleasantly, creating the feel of a cheap Hollywood spy movie set during the Cold War. A couple of minutes later, a detective entered, a thin man with a pale face and a small mustache, resembling a tired accountant more than an investigator. "First name, last name," he began in a bored voice, clearly convinced of my guilt. "Cody West," I said, "and I'm innocent. Someone dumped a body next to me." The detective sighed wearily and rubbed his eyes. "West, I've been doing this job for 20 years, and that's the first time I've heard that. Did you take drugs yesterday?" "Only if they were hidden in the orange juice, but yesterday I drank exclusively cranberry juice." The detective peered over his glasses and suddenly smiled. "Wait a minute, I recognize you. You're that YouTube guy always investigating weird things. You were hunting that psycho cat last year, weren't you?" "Exactly," I sighed. My reputation clearly wasn't doing me any favors. "So we finally caught you, Mr. Amateur Detective," the officer chuckled. "Now you're starring in your own story, huh?" "This isn't funny. I genuinely don't remember what happened last night. I only remember a girl named Laura, Lana, Lena. Damn, I don't remember." "How convenient," smirked the detective. "But you certainly recall waking up next to a dead body." "He was already there when I woke up. I'm even willing to take a lie detector test," I declared desperately, feeling like I was sinking deeper into this absurd situation. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a young woman stormed in, swinging her purse like a battle axe. "He's innocent," she declared. "I dragged him into this." I raised my head and recognized her. She was the one who promised me an unforgettable party last night. "There," I exclaimed happily. "She's responsible for my pajamas." The girl gave me an indignant look and nervously fixed her hair. "Cody, forget the pajamas. My uncle, he's the man you woke up next to." "What?" I nearly choked in outrage. "Are you the one who hit him with the frying pan?" "No, I don't even cook," she protested. "I just wanted him to like you. He collects rare pajamas, so I dressed you up to his taste." The detective wearily interrupted. "All right, hold on. Let's take this step by step. If neither of you killed the man, who did?" "Exactly," I chimed in. "Who?" At that moment, the door burst open again. A man in an expensive suit entered, looked suspiciously at us, and loudly announced, "I'm Mr. West's lawyer. Release my client immediately." I glanced at the girl, then at the lawyer, whispering into her ear, "Do you know this lawyer?" "First time seeing him," she whispered back in surprise. The lawyer smiled broadly and handed me his business card, which read, "Dennis Kroschka. Legal services. Expensive, but effective." "But I didn't hire you," I started protesting. "Well, I've already been hired," the lawyer cheerfully replied, winking. "Someone really wants you out of here immediately. We'll discuss the details outside." They released me with a signed undertaking, and when we got outside, the lawyer shoved an envelope into my hand and quickly walked away, shouting back, "Don't forget, Cody, we're a team now." I opened the envelope and found a note inside. "Thanks for last night. If you want to stay alive, forget everything about it." "Great," I sighed, glancing back at the police station. "I should have definitely woken up in different pajamas today." I stood on the steps of the police station, awkwardly adjusting my pink unicorn pajamas. Passers-by stared at me openly, as if I were a street performer about to start dancing or juggling flaming torches. Considering everything I'd been through today, dancing with unicorns would have been the least of my problems. The lawyer, who had appeared out of nowhere and confidently rescued me from the clutches of the police, turned out to be a man around my age, wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit with a face reminiscent of expensive toothpaste, smooth, fresh, and utterly meaningless. "Wait a minute," I said, turning toward him. "Who exactly are you?" "I didn't hire you, I have no money, and I definitely can't afford your fees. The best I can offer is a cup of coffee and a hug." He chuckled, adjusting his expensive thin-framed glasses. "Your fee has already been paid, Mr. West. My name is David. I'll gladly take that coffee, but save the hugs for someone cuter." "At least I saved on the coffee," I grumbled, then added more seriously, "Who paid?" David smiled mysteriously, nudging me toward a silver sedan. "Let's discuss it somewhere safer. Your unicorns are attracting too much attention." We got into the car and the lawyer started the engine. I carefully examined the interior. Clean, tidy, suspiciously expensive. Usually, people with cars like this don't defend me. They're more likely to sue me. "Listen," I finally burst out. "Last night's party ended with me waking up next to a corpse. Could you please explain what's going on and why you decided to help me?" The lawyer glanced at me with sympathy and a mysterious smirk. "You see, Mr. West, I work for someone who cares very much about your fate. And believe me, it has nothing to do with your funny YouTube videos." "Then what is it about?" He paused theatrically, turned onto a quiet street, parked, and finally said softly, "It's about the man you woke up next to this morning." "What's wrong with him? Other than him being slightly dead, of course." "That was Michael Bradshaw, a millionaire, collector, and owner of a chain of nightclubs. Trust me, waking up next to that particular corpse was extremely unlucky for you. He wasn't exactly a pleasant person. He had more enemies than unicorns on your pajamas." I thoughtfully stroked my pajamas as if hoping to find emotional support from the smiling unicorn, who offered nothing but a goofy grin. "Are you saying I accidentally stumbled into the middle of the murder of someone influential?" "Exactly," David sighed. "But your appearance in that apartment wasn't an accident. You were deliberately lured there. I strongly suggest you figure out who set you up. Otherwise, you'll remain the prime and only suspect." "Brilliant," I muttered. "So, who exactly was kind enough to frame me?" "That's exactly what you need to figure out," David replied. "I'm a lawyer, not a detective. My job is keeping you out of jail. Investigating murders is your hobby, as I recall from your YouTube channel." I twitched nervously. "And if I don't want to investigate?" David shrugged and smirked. "Then you'll have to get used to prison uniforms instead of unicorn pajamas. Although maybe unicorns suit you better." He stopped outside my apartment building and I got out, relieved. Several neighbors walking their dogs gave me curious looks. One of the dogs even whimpered sympathetically upon seeing my pajamas. "You know, David, thanks for the support," I told him. "But your mysterious employer could have at least given me some normal clothes." The lawyer opened the car window and handed me a bag. "Already thought of that." I opened the bag and found jeans, a t-shirt, and a note inside. "Next time, Cody, be more careful with parties. You're still in the game. There's no way out." David waved goodbye and drove off, leaving me standing on the sidewalk in pink unicorn pajamas, simultaneously feeling anger and determination boil inside me. "All right," I muttered, watching the car disappear. "Whoever dragged me into this mess, I'll find you and figure out why I ended up at this ridiculous unicorn pajama party." At that moment, an elderly neighbor passed by with his poodle. Seeing me, he shook his head sympathetically. "Young man, you really should see a doctor. Seriously." I sighed and headed back home, firmly deciding one thing: I'd have to investigate this murder. Otherwise, my next party wouldn't involve cute girls and cocktails, but rather tough guys in striped uniforms. Entering my apartment, I sat down on the floor and closed my eyes, exhausted. Only one thought kept circling in my head. Who even came up with the idea of a stupid pajama party, and how did I agree to something so absurd? Just then, someone knocked on my door again. Approaching cautiously and peeking through the peephole, I saw the girl from yesterday standing there, smiling broadly and holding a large box. "Cody, open up! It's me again!" she shouted cheerfully. "I brought you another pajama set for tonight." I opened the door resignedly and asked gloomily, "Unicorns again?" She laughed brightly. "Nope, this time it's bunnies." I groaned quietly and let her inside, sensing that my adventures were far from over. When a girl with a mysterious smile appears in your life holding a box, you should definitely expect trouble. Verified by personal experience and guaranteed by yours truly, Cody West. Especially when the girl resembles a cross between a supermodel and a secret agent. And the box she's carrying looks as if it might contain either another humiliating pajama set or a miniature atomic bomb. "I'm Lana," she introduced herself, walking into my apartment and scanning it critically. Her expression suggested she expected to find something closer to a branch of the Louvre rather than the typical single man's messy dwelling. "Do you remember me?" "Should I?" I asked cautiously, recalling how I'd previously tried calling her Laura, Lena, and even Lisa. Lana placed the box on the table, took off her coat, and sat down in an armchair, crossing her legs. Her posture was so confident and commanding that I immediately felt like a guest, despite being in my own apartment. "Yesterday, you were drinking cocktails, dancing on the table, and telling everyone you're the best detective in this city," she said, smirking slightly. I choked in embarrassment. "I don't drink," I weakly protested. "Usually." Lana rolled her eyes. "Right, and I don't eat after 6 and absolutely hate chocolate," she scoffed. "Cody, yesterday you danced the Macarena on the table and shouted that you'd expose every criminal in the world." I grimaced at the mental image. "I hope nobody recorded that." "Unfortunately, around 20 witnesses recorded it on their phones," she replied slyly. "Probably already online. But that's the least of our problems. We have something more serious to deal with." "More serious than a dead body?" I sighed heavily. "Yes. Your lawyer, David, works for my ex-husband," Lana announced casually, as if discussing the weather. I stared at her in shock. "What? Couldn't he have mentioned that earlier? If he'd told you that, you would have run away and ended up not free, but at the bottom of the nearest lake," Lana calmly explained, inspecting her nails. "You see, my ex-husband is precisely the person who now benefits from making you look like the killer. Then why did he send me a lawyer who got me out of police custody? So you'd relax and stop asking inconvenient questions." Lana looked at me sympathetically, as though addressing a naive child. "Cody, don't be dense. He's manipulating you until you find out who the real murderer is." Wait, I raised my hands. "Why do you know more about me than I do?" Lana smirked and opened the box, pulling out a gun. "This is yours. You asked me to hide it yesterday." I nearly choked in surprise. "I asked you? I've never even seen this weapon before." Lana sighed heavily, looking at me like a 5-year-old child who stubbornly denies eating an entire jar of jam. "Do you remember anything from yesterday at all?" I lost the ability to speak clearly and just nodded dumbly. "Only the Macarena and a very tasty cranberry drink." She chuckled and shook her head. "You must have been drugged with something. Last night you called me in a panic, begging me to come over. You said someone wanted to kill you and frame you for Michael Bradshaw's murder. I came, found you in terrible shape, and took the guns so you wouldn't end up in a shootout too. Then this morning you woke up surrounded by pink unicorns. I groaned in embarrassment. I swear I've never seen that weapon before. Lana sighed heavily, giving me a look reserved for a 5-year-old who stubbornly denies eating an entire jar of jam. Do you honestly not remember anything from yesterday? I shook my head in defeat. Well, first things first, you should change clothes, Lana said seriously. Too much pink for a man holding a gun. You look like a kindergarten entertainer forgotten by the parents. I nodded resignedly and headed to the bedroom, contemplating how disastrously I'd apparently spent the previous evening. Passing through the apartment, I considered the embarrassing reality that 20 people now probably had video evidence of my wild dancing. When I returned from the bedroom, Lana was already chatting cheerfully with my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Penelope, who was animatedly sharing her recollections. And when I saw Cody in those pajamas, I knew immediately something wasn't right. Our Cody would never willingly wear something like that. Exactly my thought, Lana nodded seriously. Ready? Lana asked me, noticing I'd returned. I swallowed nervously and nodded uncertainly. Are you suggesting we go back to the crime scene? Do we have another choice? No, but could we at least bring along some less lethal kitchen utensils? I joked nervously. Something less deadly? She raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Fine, I sighed. But promise me that you won't dress me in pink this time. I promise, she replied earnestly. Though blue does suit you nicely. I rolled my eyes and headed toward the door. At that very moment, Lana called after me. So, are you ready to revisit the crime scene? I gulped and nodded uncertainly. You're really suggesting we go back there? Do we have any other choice? Not really, but can we at least bring some less deadly kitchen utensils with us? I smiled nervously. I'd feel safer. Just hurry up, she laughed, shaking her head. With resignation, I stepped outside, feeling that no matter what happened next, at least I wouldn't be wearing pink pajamas this time. If someone had told me yesterday that I'd be returning to a crime scene alongside a long-legged beauty holding a loaded gun, I would have seriously questioned their imagination. Yet, here I was, standing in front of the very apartment where I'd woken up wearing unicorn pajamas next to a dead man. Lana stood next to me, tense, and uttered an ominous phrase. Well, shall we go in without knocking? Maybe we could knock just out of politeness, I offered uncertainly. Cody, if you want politeness, host a tea party in your kitchen, Lana snorted, pulling out the keys. This is a matter of life and death. Mostly death, I muttered, following her inside. Suspicious silence reigned in the apartment. Even the furniture seemed to be holding its breath, awaiting our arrival. Nervously, I looked around, relieved to see neither a corpse, nor police, nor even a blood-covered frying pan. Everything was perfectly clean. Are you sure this is the right apartment? I hesitated. Of course, Lana replied irritably. Why the silly questions? Well, it seems suspiciously tidy for a crime scene. Lana paused, looking warily around. You're right. Someone cleaned up. And a bit too thoroughly. We moved into the bedroom where I had found millionaire Bradshaw's lifeless body that morning. Instead of a corpse, we saw a perfectly made sofa, and in place of the frying pan, there was a vase of flowers on the floor. That's some impressive cleaning, I remarked admiringly. If I survive this, I'll definitely hire whoever cleaned up. Very funny, Lana hissed, inspecting the bed closely. Listen, I don't get it. There should be blood everywhere. So either the dead man resurrected, washed up and went out for coffee, or someone wanted to hide the evidence and turned this crime scene into an IKEA showroom. Lana gave me an annoyed look, but suddenly cried out sharply, Cody, look! I turned, heart jumping into my throat. Lana stood by the window, holding a small piece of pink fabric with a unicorn pattern. Oh no, I murmured. Oh yes, Lana said sarcastically. This is from your pajamas, Cody. Clearly you didn't come here by yourself. You were brought here. At least not in a sack, I nervously joked. Just then, a faint rustling noise came from the hallway. Lana and I exchanged alarmed glances, froze, and slowly turned towards the bedroom door. The rustling repeated, followed by the sound of footsteps. "Are you expecting someone?" Lana whispered. "Only the plumber," I smiled nervously, "but he usually doesn't sneak around." The footsteps drew closer. I raised the gun, deciding to pretend I was brave. Seconds stretched endlessly until a tall guy with long hair and a denim jacket appeared in the doorway. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, staring at us suspiciously. "Us?" I echoed incredulously. "Actually, who are you and why are you strolling around here like you own the place?" "Because I do," the guy insisted. "What do you mean it's yours?" Lana snapped. "This apartment belongs to my uncle, Michael Bradshaw." The guy laughed, shaking his head. "Lady, my father's name is Michael Bradshaw, but you're obviously not my sister, I'd have noticed." I slowly sat on the edge of the bed, burying my face in my hands. "Wait, let me clarify. You're the son of the Michael Bradshaw?" "Exactly. Jim Bradshaw. But who the hell are you two? And why do you, man, look like you got beaten up by a unicorn?" Lana elbowed me nervously. "Explain it to him." "Wonderful," I sighed heavily. "My name's Cody West. Last night I ended up here at your father's party, and this morning I woke up in this bedroom next to his dead body, wearing a ridiculously embarrassing pair of pajamas." Jim nodded, visibly relieved. "Finally, someone who knows what happened yesterday. I've been trying to find my dad. His phone is off, and the housekeeper said there was police here this morning. I thought he'd pulled another prank and left for Hawaii. Dad loves practical jokes." "So the frying pan and blood were also part of the joke?" Lana asked skeptically. Jim thought for a moment, then snapped his fingers. "Wait, I remember. Dad mentioned he had a huge surprise planned for all the guests. Maybe that was the prank?" Lana and I exchanged glances. "Cody, could the murder have been staged?" Lana asked uncertainly. "I don't know," I admitted honestly, looking around the suspiciously spotless apartment. "But if this was a prank, then who's currently in the morgue?" Jim went pale and slowly sank into a chair. "I hadn't considered that," he whispered quietly. "Either my father has a double or your dad's resurrected and currently wandering around town," I finished grimly. At this point, I'm willing to believe anything. At that moment, my phone vibrated. The number was unknown. I picked up, and a mechanical voice said coldly, "If you want to know the truth, Unicorn, come to the White Rabbit Club tonight at midnight, and wear your pajamas." I swallowed nervously, thinking hopelessly, "Well, Cody, now you're definitely in deep trouble. If you've ever received anonymous calls demanding you show up somewhere at midnight wearing pajamas, then you know exactly what kind of thoughts immediately flood your mind. First, it's urgently necessary to change your phone number. Second, why pajamas and why midnight?" "Who was that?" Lana asked, eyeing me suspiciously. "Unknown number," I replied grimly. "Said if I wanted to know the truth, I should come to the White Rabbit Club tonight, wearing pajamas." "In pajamas?" Lana raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Yes, exactly." Jim quickly grabbed his phone and started tapping something into the search engine. "Yeah, the club exists, but it's some weird place. Invitation only, secret parties, and all that. Dad mentioned it once or twice, but only vaguely." Just then, my stomach growled loudly, reminding me that I hadn't eaten since yesterday evening. "Can we discuss this further over breakfast?" I suggested, attempting to calm myself. "I'm about to start chewing my own shoes." They agreed. We left Bradshaw's immaculate apartment, making sure it appeared that extremely polite burglars had just paid a visit. At a nearby cafe, I ordered a gigantic omelet and a double espresso, while Jim and Lana settled for tea and pastries. The waitress took our orders, noting my clearly anxious expression with curiosity. As soon as she left, I leaned closer to the table. Okay, let's summarize. Someone framed me, killed your father, Jim, and is now playing weird games involving unicorn pajamas and midnight rendezvous. Why me specifically? Clearly you crossed someone's path, Lana said casually, breaking her pastry. Do you have any idea who it might be? My only recent conflict involved a cat burglar, I groaned. Hardly a candidate for murder, though. A cat burglar? Jim laughed, amused. Your life really is fascinating, Cody. I glared at him before turning back to Lana. Could someone really hate me enough to do all this? People are strange, Cody, Lana shrugged. Trust me, I've seen worse. Jim suddenly perked up, staring at his phone screen. Hey, look at this. The White Rabbit Club does exist. It has a website, secretive parties, invitation only, featuring unicorns, rabbits, and the city's most mysterious guests. Unicorns and rabbits, I groaned. Why can't they just throw normal animal-themed parties? Dogs, or at least hamsters? Jim chuckled. Your life really is fascinating, Cody. I shot him a murderous look and turned to Lana again. Do I have to go to this club? Absolutely, she replied decisively. But you're not going alone. I'll come with you. And what about me? Jim interjected. It was my father, after all. I'm curious, too. Fine, we're going together, Lana agreed. Safety in numbers. Can I at least take something less lethal than a gun this time? I joked nervously. Maybe a shoehorn. Cody, Lana warned, if someone else turns up dead from kitchen utensils, no one will believe you're innocent. Fine, I'll take something softer. I smiled weakly. Perhaps a shoehorn. Lana rolled her eyes, laughing quietly. When breakfast finally arrived, I ate my omelet thoughtfully, trying to figure out what nightmare awaited me at a club filled with unicorns and rabbits. But one thing I knew for certain, things weren't likely to get better, only worse. Stop dramatizing, Lana smiled gently, touching my hand. Just be yourself. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, I muttered miserably, realizing there was no turning back now. When I stepped out of the taxi in front of the White Rabbit Club at 11:30 at night, I felt like I was part of some bizarre movie. The club turned out to be an old brick building, adorned with a huge neon sign featuring a cartoon rabbit winking mockingly at me. If I don't survive this, please bury me without unicorns, I muttered, adjusting the collar of my brand new pajamas, which were no longer pink, but blue, covered in white rabbits. Lana couldn't resist buying me a new official suit, claiming my old one was too dangerous to wear again. It was the weakest excuse I'd ever heard in my life. Lana and Jim stood beside me. Lana, unlike me, was impeccably dressed in an elegant black suit that emphasized her figure, while Jim hadn't bothered dressing up at all, wearing a t-shirt with the inscription, "I'm not the killer." Honestly. Listen, I whispered nervously, maybe we should just go home. I have this feeling that I'm about to be kidnapped by unicorn fanatics and forced to spend the rest of my life convincing people that unicorns are real. Stop whining, Cody, Lana replied firmly. It's time we find out who's setting you up. The guard at the entrance, a giant with a face that screamed, "I eat concrete for breakfast," stared coldly and blocked me with his massive hand. Where do you think you're going dressed like that, young man? I stared at him in confusion and shrugged helplessly. To a pajama party, obviously. The guard gave me a severe once-over, then suddenly broke into a broad smile. Enjoy your evening, Mr. West. They've been expecting you. We stepped inside and found ourselves in a hall filled with people dressed in all sorts of pajamas. Dragons, elephants, foxes, and one 50-something man even wore a giant giraffe costume. Look, Cody, you're among your own kind, Jim said, barely holding back laughter. I sighed gloomily, but just then, a strange woman in a green frog pajama approached me suspiciously. "Are you Cody West?" "Yes, and who are you?" I asked cautiously. "I'm the club owner," she replied, curiously examining my rabbit-covered outfit. "Honestly, the unicorn pajamas suited you better. Trust me." I was about to reply sarcastically, but Lana gently nudged me with her elbow, smiling politely. "We're not here to discuss fashion. We're trying to find out who framed Cody." The woman shrugged indifferently and smirked. "Someone told me to give you this," she said, handing me a folded note. I opened the paper and read it aloud. "Meet me in the unicorn room exactly at midnight. Just you and your conscience." "Great, so now I'm your conscience," Lana joked dryly. "I don't know," I said nervously, glancing around. "I have a suspicion my conscience ran off yesterday morning when I woke up next to a dead body." Jim laughed but stopped abruptly when I glared at him. "Sorry, Cody," he smiled apologetically. "It's just nerves." The clock showed 5 minutes to midnight, and my heart raced like it was about to enter a Formula One competition. The unicorn room was at the very end of the corridor, and I turned desperately to my companions. "You two staying here?" "No," Lana answered firmly. "We'll be nearby in the rabbit room. If anything goes wrong, scream something cheerful." "Like unicorns attacking," Jim suggested helpfully. "Keep joking, but this isn't funny for me," I sighed, reluctantly moving toward the unicorn room, feeling like prey willingly entering a tiger's lair. I paused at the unicorn room's door, took a deep breath, and opened it slowly. Inside, it was dark and empty except for glowing unicorn-shaped fairy lights strung along the walls, giving the room a completely insane look. "Hey, anyone here?" I asked cautiously into the void. "Welcome back, Cody," came a familiar, cold voice from behind me. I spun around sharply and froze. Standing in front of me was the very man I'd seen lying dead next to me that morning, Michael Bradshaw himself. You're alive," I managed weakly. "As you can see," Bradshaw smiled and winked. "Did you enjoy my surprise?" I sank slowly onto the nearest sofa, never taking my eyes off the man whose lifeless body I'd seen firsthand. "But how? I mean, I saw you dead this morning." "Yes, my dear Cody," Bradshaw replied calmly. "You saw exactly what you were supposed to see, but don't worry. This time I'll try not to die for real." "So it was a prank," I hissed furiously. Bradshaw nodded with an amused smile. "Partially. Someone genuinely wants me dead, and I wanted them to believe I'd already been killed. You turned out to be the perfect candidate to take the fall. Sorry about the unicorns." "I almost ended up in prison," I shouted indignantly. "Minor inconvenience. What matters now is you're officially in the game," he said softly, leaning closer. "You and I both need to find the real killer, or soon we'll both be resting peacefully in heaven for real." I closed my eyes wearily and whispered, "Why unicorns, though?" I continued staring at Michael Bradshaw with an expression that could best be described as, "When you see a resurrected millionaire, smile politely and pretend everything is perfectly normal." "Wait a second," I muttered finally, rubbing my temples. "Are you saying I was framed just so everyone would believe you were dead?" "Exactly," Bradshaw replied cheerfully, his smile widening. "You're just the perfect victim." "Thanks a lot. Now I'm the perfect suspect," I sighed gloomily. "What did I do to deserve this honor?" "You're easy to frame, Cody. You're cute, trusting, and can't remember anything you do after the third cocktail," he grinned. "Actually, I don't normally drink," I grumbled. "And by the way, why unicorns? Why not dinosaurs, dragons, or at least penguins?" Michael shrugged with the pleased expression of someone enjoying the whole spectacle immensely. "Unicorns inspire trust. Who would suspect a murderer dressed in pink unicorn pajamas? It's genius. I rolled my eyes. Perhaps that logic worked, but clearly not in my favor. So who's this mysterious person who wants you dead so badly? I asked. The millionaire's face darkened slightly as he moved towards the window, gazing thoughtfully into the distance. Someone very close to me. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out who exactly yet. Great, I said sarcastically. So now you've resurrected, and we'll team up to hunt your killer? Sounds like a soap opera. I thought you might enjoy it, he remarked casually. Enjoy it? I exclaimed. I'm having a nervous breakdown. I'm haunted by unicorn nightmares, and my elderly neighbor is convinced I've completely lost it. At least the views on your channel will skyrocket, Michael replied coolly. Wait, now I'm a YouTube star too, I shouted indignantly. Should I start live streaming my life 24/7, wearing pajamas and surrounded by corpses? At that moment, the door swung open sharply. Lana and Jim stood at the threshold, clearly frightened. Cody, we heard shouting. What happened? Lana began, then froze when she saw Bradshaw. Uncle Michael? Hello, dear niece, Michael Bradshaw said calmly, smiling. Surprise. But how? You're supposed to be dead, she stammered, turning pale. You know, sometimes even I think so, Michael laughed. But as you can see, I'm very much alive and nearly well. Jim stood nearby, his mouth wide open, shifting his gaze slowly between his father and me. So this really was a prank? You seriously tricked everyone? Quiet, Michael interrupted sharply. This isn't a game, it's an attempt to stay alive. While I pretended to be dead, my killer let down his guard. Now we have a chance to discover who's behind all this. We? I asked nervously. Guys, I didn't sign up for this. My hobbies involve cozy blankets and pets, not hunting down millionaire killers. Too late, Cody, Michael smiled confidently. You're already in the game. There's no turning back. I'd prefer to exit at the nearest stop, I grumbled. Lana approached me decisively. Cody, now isn't the time to panic. Let's catch the killer first, and then you can have your meltdown. Very inspiring, I muttered, but reluctantly stood up and sighed heavily. So, what's our plan? Michael smiled mysteriously and handed me a set of car keys. First, we'll head to my country house. Important documents are hidden there, documents that might reveal the truth. But we must act quickly and quietly. We're likely being watched. And of course, we have to go there right now, at night, in our pajamas, I asked sarcastically. Why not? Bradshaw shrugged calmly. You blend in perfectly with the night scenery, Cody. Your rabbits will provide excellent camouflage in the woods. I clenched my teeth in frustration, but didn't get a chance to respond, as my phone vibrated again in my pocket. Them again? Lana asked tensely. No, it's my neighbor, Mrs. Penelope, I said, staring at the screen. She wrote, Cody, the police visited your apartment asking about unicorns and a frying pan. Be careful. I raised my eyes grimly. Looks like pajamas and frying pans have officially become murder weapons. Jim burst out laughing. Lana shook her head in resignation, and Michael Bradshaw smiled enigmatically. Well, friends, he said, it's time to act. Cody, now it's your call. Are you going to keep pretending to be a harmless rabbit, or will you go back to being a unicorn? I sighed heavily and nodded reluctantly. Unicorns it is. After all, things can't possibly get any worse. I always believed that normal people should spend their nights sleeping comfortably in their beds, not driving somewhere unknown wearing pajamas covered with rabbits. But clearly, the universe had other plans. When we arrived at Bradshaw's massive mansion, the clock read 1:45 in the morning. The millionaire's house looked like the perfect set for a horror movie. Gloomy facade, long eerie shadows, twisted trees, and unsettling silence. Great, I sighed. If someone's going to get murdered again tonight, could we at least avoid kitchen utensils this time? What, already allergic to frying pans? Jim smirked. No, just developed a phobia of kitchenware in general, I grumbled, stepping out of the car and adjusting my rabbit pajamas, which Jim had decided were more suitable for night investigations. Michael Bradshaw approached the front door first, took out a key, and whispered softly, "Be careful. Someone might be inside. Move quietly and try not to make any noise." "Sure," I whispered sarcastically. "Rabbits are famously quiet creatures after all." Lana shushed me softly and we stepped inside. The house greeted us with total darkness. Bradshaw switched on a flashlight and we began slowly making our way through the rooms, carefully stepping on expensive carpets. "This feels exactly like a horror movie," Jim whispered nervously. "I swear a vampire's about to jump out of the closet." "If that happens, I'm hiding behind you," I assured him. "You're the one wearing a t-shirt that says, 'I'm not the killer.' Perfect bait." "Thanks, buddy," Jim whispered back dryly. We climbed the stairs to the second floor and entered Bradshaw's office, where the door stood slightly ajar. Michael stepped in first and suddenly froze. "What's wrong?" I asked, peering over his shoulder. "Someone's already been here," the millionaire muttered darkly. The office looked as if a group of crazed raccoons had searched it, papers scattered everywhere, books thrown haphazardly, and the computer was on, its screen glowing an alarming shade of red. "What's with the alarm?" Lana asked nervously, pointing at the screen. Michael approached the monitor, frowning as he read the message aloud. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out you're alive?" "You should have stayed dead, Michael." I swallowed hard and asked nervously, "Maybe we should call the police after all." I didn't exactly plan to become a witness to a double murder tonight. "No, the police won't help us yet," Michael said firmly. "We must find out who's behind this ourselves." "Wonderful," I sighed. "Again, it's just us, 4 idiots running around a stranger's house at night, surrounded by rabbits and unicorns." "Actually, the rabbits are only on you right now, Cody," Jim whispered helpfully. "Be careful. Maybe the killer exclusively hunts rabbits." I stared at him in horror. "Thanks for the support, Jim. Next time, you'll be the first victim." At that moment, a loud noise came from downstairs, as if someone had dropped a saucepan in the kitchen. "Oh no, not the cookware again," I groaned. "Quiet," Michael whispered sharply, pulling a gun from a drawer. "Follow me." We cautiously stepped into the hallway and slowly moved downstairs. My heart was beating so loud it felt like the whole house could hear it. "Maybe it's just a cat?" Lana whispered, squeezing my hand so tightly my bones cracked. "Cats don't make omelets at night," I whispered back. We approached the kitchen door carefully and peeked inside. At that moment, a bright flashlight blinded us, and an unfamiliar voice shouted, "Freeze! Hands up!" We all raised our hands simultaneously, and I suddenly realized I looked exactly like a hostage at a bizarre pajama party. Standing in the kitchen was a man holding a huge frying pan, staring at me as if recognizing an old acquaintance. "You again?" he asked in surprise, looking straight at me. "Sorry, have we met?" I cautiously asked. "No, but I recognized you by your pajamas. Last time it was pink unicorns, now rabbits." The man laughed. "Funny, you don't really look like a murderer." "Gee, thanks," I sighed sadly. "Are you doing a late-night frying pan raid, or are you looking for someone?" "Looking," the man nodded. "Apparently, we're after the same thing. I'm Detective Harrison from the police, and I'd very much like to know what you, Mr. West, are doing at night in a dead millionaire's house." "He's not dead," I replied quietly, slowly pointing to Michael Bradshaw, who stepped out from behind me. The policeman froze, his jaw dropped, and the frying pan slipped from his hand, crashing loudly onto the floor. "Bradshaw, but you're supposed to be dead," he stammered in shock. As you can see, not exactly, Michael answered calmly, and it appears we now have a common problem. When I saw Detective Harrison's face, I learned firsthand that a person could genuinely turn gray-haired in just a few seconds. Wait a minute. Bradshaw is alive, the detective repeated, pointing at Michael as if he'd just spotted a ghost. As you can see, Michael calmly confirmed, as if returning from the dead was simply a casual hobby of his. So, we've been investigating the murder of a man who is now standing here smiling at me. Harrison began to laugh nervously. Exactly, I answered. Trust me, I'm not thrilled about waking up next to supposedly dead people either. Harrison sighed deeply and sank into the nearest chair. Could someone please explain to me what the hell is going on? Michael took a seat opposite him and calmly began. I staged my own murder to uncover who was trying to kill me. Cody turned out to be both an accidental witness and the perfect suspect. Everything was going according to plan until someone genuinely started hunting him. Wait, you're saying someone is actually trying to kill me now? I panicked, grabbing my head. I thought they were just trying to scare me. Not anymore, Michael said darkly. The killer realized you know too much, and now you've become a real target. Wonderful, I groaned. You know, I was planning to take up a safer hobby, maybe growing carrots. Is it too late for a career change? Unfortunately, yes, Jim smiled cheerfully. You're stuck playing the hero, Cody. Thanks for the reminder, I replied sarcastically. Harrison looked around at us seriously and quietly asked, So if Bradshaw is alive, who exactly was taken to the morgue? A long pause followed. I nervously glanced at Michael, waiting for his response. He was my double, Bradshaw finally said with a sigh. We looked remarkably similar. I occasionally used him for certain business meetings. Someone discovered this and decided it was the perfect chance to eliminate me permanently. This is some insane soap opera, I exclaimed, throwing my hands up. Doubles, fake murders, frying pan attacks. Next, you'll tell me someone close to you set this up. You're absolutely right, Cody, Lana said quietly, and I know exactly who it is. Everyone instantly turned toward her. Who? Michael asked tensely. It's David, your lawyer, Lana said confidently. He was too eager to defend you and always appeared at the right place at the right time. Cody was almost jailed but conveniently released to be used again. Everything was far too smooth, don't you think? Seriously, the lawyer? I asked, astonished. Why would he kill his own client? Money, obviously, Michael answered calmly. David recently discovered that I planned to donate most of my fortune to charity, leaving him practically nothing. He probably decided to speed up the inheritance process. Perfect, I said sarcastically. Now we just need to find a murderous lawyer, and then we can all sleep peacefully again. I wouldn't be so optimistic, said a chilling voice from behind the door. We turned sharply. David stood in the doorway holding a gun and smiling like the winner of a beauty contest for psychopaths. Well done, Lana, David said sarcastically. You always were too clever. Too bad intelligence won't save you this time. David, stop this immediately, Michael commanded sharply. You know you won't get away with it. Oh, but I will, David smiled. You're all about to disappear. Later, the police will find only your bodies and your suicide note, expressing how tired you were of being a millionaire. I swallowed nervously, my eyes landing on the frying pan lying on the floor. You know, David, I said slowly, stepping forward, I actually have a very important question for you. David looked at me suspiciously. What question? Unicorns or rabbits? What? He asked, confused. I'm asking, do you prefer unicorns or rabbits? I repeated, quietly nudging the frying pan closer with my foot. David stared at me blankly. What does that have to do with anything? Just curious, I shrugged, then suddenly shouted, Unicorn attack! David spun around instinctively. Seizing my chance, I grabbed the frying pan and threw it directly at his head. It made a dull, satisfying sound as it connected, and he slowly collapsed onto the floor, unconscious. Silence filled the room as everyone stared at the fallen lawyer. Detective Harrison picked up David's pistol and said quietly, "Congratulations, folks. The case is officially closed." I let out a relieved breath and muttered quietly, "Can we go home now?" "Almost," Michael smiled. "First, let's have a drink to celebrate your bravery. No pajamas this time, I promise." "As long as it's not a pajama party, I'm fine with anything," I said tiredly. "Well, maybe just one small gift." Jim grinned mischievously, pulling out a pair of pink unicorn slippers from his bag. I closed my eyes and whispered hopelessly, "Dear God, why is it always unicorns?